All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're unpacking a really gripping forensic article today called A Paperless Demise, and it sets up this absolutely fascinating and honestly deeply sobering contrast. On one hand, you've got this highly documented, super vocal public life, and on the other, a massive, entirely unrecorded human tragedy. This source material, it reads almost like an administrative thriller. It meticulously tests a public official's conduct against the exact statutory laws they swore to uphold. Right out of the gate, the source asks a pretty haunting question. How do over 2,000 people just vanish from official state records? I mean, think about it. In a functioning administrative state, every single death is supposed to generate paperwork, right? A certificate, a record, a mandatory inquest. Yet this number, 2,097, represents a total, complete collapse of that system.
To really wrap our heads around the scale of this, the source points to data confirmed by India's Central Bureau of Investigation, or the CBI. 585 individuals were fully identified. 274 were partially identified. But get this, an astonishing 1,238 individuals were cremated without any identification whatsoever. The big takeaway here is that these aren't just missing people. They are people who were systematically denied an official, documented end.
Section 2. The Office and the Man, K.B.S. Sidhu.
The article places this tragedy squarely under the watch of the Deputy Commissioner of Amritsar. From May 1992 to August 1996, that apex executive position was held by K.B.S. Sidhu. And the source draws this incredibly stark contrast. It points out that the exact same administrative machinery that meticulously recorded the births of the official's own two sons in the state register completely failed to record the deaths of 1,238 unidentified people. The author argues that this shows an apparatus working flawlessly for those near its center, but failing entirely for those left at its mercy.
Now, you might be wondering about the laws at the time. Well, the source maps out the immense statutory arsenal that was literally at the Deputy Commissioner's fingertips under the Criminal Procedure Code. Section 97 allowed for immediate search warrants. Sections 174 and 176 mandated independent inquiries and official reports for any suspicious deaths. These tools were explicitly designed by law to act as mandatory safety nets to prevent secret killings. And yet, forensic records indicate that absolutely none of these were deployed.
Section 3. The 49 Days.
To show us what this administrative silence looked like in real time, the article focuses on a really critical 49-day window. It tracks the final days of Jaswant Singh Khalra. He was the human rights defender who actually exposed these mass secret cremations. So following his abduction on September 6, 1995, an official police complaint, an FIR, was registered, and a habeas corpus petition demanding his release was filed straight to the Supreme Court. For over a month, Khalra was held in illegal police custody before being murdered. And all of this, as the article points out, happened entirely within the Deputy Commissioner's direct jurisdiction.
The really crucial point the article makes here is about a missing warrant. Remember Section 97? It empowered the Deputy Commissioner to issue an immediate search warrant on day 2 of the abduction, completely bypassing the need for a court order. He could have just directed any police officer to search any premises. But despite decades of intense litigation and CBI investigations into Khalra's murder, the source reveals there is literally zero documentary evidence that the Deputy Commissioner's office ever issued that warrant.
Moving on to Section 4. The Prolific Present Archive.
So, you might think an administrator who oversaw such a controversial period would just quietly fade into obscurity. But today, K.B.S. Sidhu is actually a highly vocal public intellectual. He's published over 1,000 articles across major national newspapers and runs a popular Substack. He writes all the time about justice, governance, transparency. He even put out a 2-hour video memoir recently, claiming to share the quote-unquote hitherto untold events of his time in Amritsar. The author of our source notes that he has essentially built a massive post-retirement credential precisely on his administrative experience.
He frequently writes about the deliberate, systemic denial of justice. It's clear he's incredibly fluent in the language of accountability and human rights. He fiercely demands justice, like he did in an open letter about a 2015 police firing case at Behbal Kalan. But the author draws a really sharp distinction here. They argue that he's super eager to demand transparency and critique cover-ups, provided the cover-up belongs to a completely different administration in a different era.
Because when we actually look at what is missing from his massive 1,000-article archive, the silence is, well, it's deafening. Across tens of thousands of published words about his tenure, the source notes there is not a single mention of Jaswant Singh Khalra, no mention of the 2,097 illegal cremations, No mention of the Durgyana Mandir cremation ground, which, by the way, was a site confirmed by the CBI that sat right next door to a temple he proudly helped organize a prime ministerial visit to. Those 49 days of Khalra's illegal custody, completely absent from his untold history.
And this builds up to the jarring tension of the article. It presents this modern champion of transparency who demands accountability, standing in absolute, sharp contrast to his past as a silent administrator. We're looking at a man whose office produced 0 official reports for over 2,000 dead, and who today maintains an unbroken silence about the mass human rights violations that happened on his own watch.
Section 5. A paperless demise.
Let's synthesize what this means for the historical record. The source concludes by giving us this stark definition of a paperless demise. It's an administrative reality where human beings are systematically denied death certificates, inquest records, or even just a name in a state register. Ultimately, what those 1,238 unidentified victims suffered wasn't just a physical death. It was an administrative erasure by the very office that was required by law to document their existence. They were denied the final dignity of simply being accounted for.
Which brings us to a final profound question raised by the article. When an official archive holds 1,000 demands for justice, but 0 records of a local massacre, what is the true legacy of that office? It leaves us with a pretty chilling realization to ponder. If the man in charge writes 1,000 articles about justice today, but ignores the 2,000 bodies in his own backyard from yesterday, what is actually written into history? It's a heavy, memorable thought to leave you with, really challenging us to look closely at who writes our history and exactly what they choose to leave out. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.